Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to give you guys a review of Cable because I just recently maxed him a couple of days ago and I was finally able to play with him in the Blast Mail Day, so I can now give you my full expectations for the character, not only based on what I've seen from the community, but now what I've been able to test with my own hands and my own skills, given a totally geared out character with Uru, all the skills, ISOs, and Obelisk. And what I can say is that Cable is the real deal. Cable will eventually, if not immediately, replace both Doctor Strange and Jean Grey for me in Extreme Alliance battle. And if that is something that you take seriously, then that is a huge disclaimer, because it means that you don't have to rush both of those characters. Whereas they are both very expensive to get, you can start putting feathers into something else, for example, or you don't have to rush those other 4 X-Men besides Wolverine if you want, or you don't even have to rush to get Doctor Strange anymore. Although you still want those characters, it is insane to think that we are now getting a replacement for not 1 but 2 of the top scoring and most consistent characters in that game mode. Aside from Extreme Alliance battle though, Cable is all around a fantastic character. He has great damage, he has lots of iframes, he has very cool animations, and he's got the thing that you guys seem to love the most, a channeling skill, Plasma Shower. It's the skill that you hold down and it keeps on hitting. But overall, I think that Cable is a really well-rounded character. He's got invincibility, he's got a heal, he's got a self buff, and he's got tons and tons of AoE. He just clears out waves and waves of mobs. He's very, very good in Shadowland. I've cleared stage 25, 26 relay modes, which are probably the hardest in the game, where you have 2 sets of 3, those like new relay modes that they have. And he's able to clear it in under 30 seconds. He's able to sometimes clear the stage in 10 seconds because his burst damage is just that insane if you learn how to time it properly, and that's a big part of the character. But fear not, because it's not difficult, it's actually quite easy. Now, as far as Cable's skills go, he's got pretty cool ones, and they all basically do something different, but they all have lots of different animations going on for them. Annihilation is going to remove effects, which is, you know, pretty nice, but it only lasts for 1 second and it only gives a 20% chance to miss. Annihilation is a better served skill to use for you to move around with, because he kind of jumps forward and then shoots and then jumps again. It's also good for using the iframe. It's got an intermittent iframe, so you can use that to get out of the way of attacks. So I think it's more defensive than offensive. However, Calling Providence, his second skill, is very much so offensive. It's his 2-star skill, and it's a very quick cast, so you can cast it and then immediately cancel into something else. It buffs his crit rate, so you can follow that up with a heavy attack if you'd like, and it also brings down these lingering blasts, similar to the ones that he brings down in his world boss stage if you've played that or watched that, so you can easily rack up some damage by doing 2 into a different skill. His third skill, Meditation, will give him a small heal. Wouldn't rely on the heal too much, but the guard hit is nice, 5 hits for 5 seconds, and it does have an intermittent iframe again in the second part of the skill, so you could cast that for that, but I think you might as well just cast it for the guard hit and then cancel it. It also does summon some kind of daggers that fly out at the opponent. I think they're daggers. It's happening very fast, and it does do some residual damage. And then he's got that classic Chance to Penetrate that both Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver have, which is just fantastic for any game mode, even especially PvP. And then we have his bread and butter skills, his 4th and 5th skills. His 4th skill is an iframe, which summons a bunch of kind of teleportation or holes in time traveling warp things, kind of like a black hole, but it's small and it's blue. And then missiles come out of them. Very, very cool, lots of damage, nice animation. And then his 5th skill is the one that you love, which he puts the giant cannon on his arm, or from his arm onto his shoulder, and he just blasts and blasts and blasts. And it's especially good because it also gives him 5 seconds of invincibility, so he's really borrowing from his father, Cyclops, by getting a skill that channels on the 5th with invincibility on it. So that's very cool, and it deals a crap ton of damage. So now I think you'd be wondering, what is the rotation for Cable? So if you want to make the most out of Cable, what you want to do is you want to hit the hardest on his 5th skill. So whether you're going from 2 into 5, to take advantage of that extra crit rate, or whether you're trying to activate your damage proc obelisk, your increased damage for 1 attacks, and then go into the 5th skill, that's the one you want to prioritize. It does the most damage and it does the damage the fastest. Also keep in mind that because it's a channeling skill, you're going to want as much attack speed as possible, because the number of attacks that you get per second with this channeling skill will increase if you have more attack speed. Makes sense, kind of logical. So you want to get as close to 130% attack speed as possible in order to take advantage and take the most out of his 5th skill. And that's going to come into play a little bit later when we talk about the ISO 8 set, but just remember that for now, attack speed is a very good thing to have on Cable. As far as an actual rotation goes for Cable, especially if you want something for Extreme Alliance battle, the rotation that I felt works the best requires a lot of skill canceling, but it's actually quite smooth once you get used to it. And I will show you a clip while I'm talking about it so you guys can see what I'm saying instead of just watching my face and listening to my words. Once you get into the rotation, the very first rotation is a little bit different, but once you get into the rotation, and this is assuming you just had the obelisk proc with the damage and the 5th skill, so once that is over, the rotation goes like this. You open up with the 1st skill in order to get away from the Frost Beast and set yourself up. As soon as you see the roll, the tuck and roll and the blast, you're going to cancel or switch into the 4th skill. As soon as you see all of those blue circles appear, and you can count them out so you can remember how many there are, as soon as you see all of those, you're then going to cancel that into the 2nd skill, and then immediately cancel that into the 3rd skill, and then immediately cancel that into the 5th skill. So if you read that out, it's 1, 4 cancel, 2 cancel, 3 cancel, 5. And that's why I put the 2 cancel, 3 cancel very close together with no comma or no break in the text, because I wanted to give you another visual example of how certain skill cancelings need to be done at different parts of the skill. So sometimes you cancel a skill midway through. I would say midway through the 4th skill you should be canceling, but at the very beginning of the 2nd skill you should be canceling. As soon as you see him point, you should cancel. As soon as you hit that 3rd skill and you see just some animation happen, you see some dagger shoot out, you cancel immediately into the 5th skill. And basically what should happen is you should start to fire off with Plasma Shower, and then the damage proc should activate. It will then buff your 5th skill as long as you continue to cast it. Now the 5th skill only gives you 5 seconds of invincibility. Luckily, the obelisk only lasts for 5 seconds. So you'll be roughly casting your 5th skill with the full activation damage of your obelisk proc for almost 5 seconds. It'll be anywhere from 4 to 4.5 seconds, and that sweet spot is something that you're going to have to work on. But then when you see the invincibility clock kind of ticking down, and once it gets to 1 second left on your character icon menu in the game, then you're going to want to then go back into the 1st skill, because if you keep channeling the 5th skill, you'll die, because you won't be invincible anymore. You'll take hits from the Frost Beast, you'll take meteor damage. Just to give you guys a disclaimer, I did die a few times once I got more comfortable with the skill rotation and I got more aggressive, but I was also able to up my score substantially, so that also matters for that. But you can definitely play conservatively and still get above 700,000 once you've geared the character up, which is far better than you can get with Doctor Strange on Blast Mail, and probably better than some of us are getting right now with Sharon Rogers or even Jean Grey for No Restriction Day. And I imagine you can get even more on No Restriction Day because of the inclusion of She-Hulk's leadership. So those are the skills for Cable. It's really nice to allow, or to align, I should say, a 5th skill that does channeling damage with a damage proc. Once you get the hang of it, it feels so natural, and you can just see that you're hitting the Frost Beast, then the text comes up that your obelisk is procced, and then the damage just skyrockets and the numbers just start racking up. And in a game mode where you're paying attention to the health like Shadowland, you'll really see it. They'll start to chip away, and then suddenly their health will just evaporate. That's Cable. As far as his gear goes, the only thing that Cable is missing is crit damage. So crit damage is going to be the big thing that you want to emphasize for him on something like an obelisk and an ISO 8 set. You're obviously still going to need skill cooldown, ignore defense, the regular stuff, but crit damage is the one big thing that he's lacking because he doesn't have it anywhere on his skills or on his gears natively. As far as Uru goes, as you can see, I do have quite a few crit rate because I'm lucky enough to have crit damage on my obelisk, but otherwise I would need to put a lot of crit damage Urus, and I originally had more on his set. I think the ideal would be, you know, 2 energy attack, 2 crit damage or crit rate, whatever you need, and then the last one would be your kind of utility one for ignore defense or skill cooldown. I think you should aim for something around at least 180% crit damage, and then whatever else you can get in crit rate, but you at least want to get up to 180 crit damage to make sure that when you are critting, you hit big numbers. The reason why there's so much more of an emphasis on crit damage for Cable is because he does get 5 seconds of crit rate buff from calling Providence. It's not going to last for the entire duration of Plasma Shower, and it won't last for your 4th skill and things like that, so it's not perfect, but it's something that you should take into consideration. As far as his obelisk goes, again, because he's missing crit damage on his gear, this is probably the easiest and best way to give him crit damage. It's to roll natively a crit damage obelisk as the first stat, and then hope that you get a damage proc as the 3rd stat, or I guess the 2nd stat in some cases. Lightning damage is totally unnecessary. I just didn't roll anything else. If you rolled something that had crit damage twice or crit damage crit rate, I mean, those would be insane. Those would be lovely. You don't need max HP. You don't need guard break immune. You really only need crit damage as much as you can. Crit rate if you're lucky, but you really just need the crit damage and the damage proc if you want to use him for Extreme Alliance battle. And why wouldn't you? He's basically the man. He's the second coming of Doctor Strange, essentially. Lastly, I want to talk about his ISO 8 set, and this is why I said that you guys should remember at the beginning that attack speed is important. Because attack speed is so important for Cable's 5th skill and getting the most number of hits out of that 5th skill while your damage proc has activated, there isn't as much of an emphasis on Overdrive. I still think Overdrive is the best set because I know a lot of you are missing skill or crit damage, especially from your cards. I know I don't have much, and I imagine some of you might have less, but there is also a big argument to be made for Power of Angry Hulk because it gives that 7.7% attack speed. And if you have no attack speed on your cards, that's going to really help you out. However, there's one more way that you can get attack speed from Cable. If you're really lacking attack speed, you can go ahead and imitate the group or the team up that I was using in the clip that I showed you earlier. You absolutely need Tier 2 Phil Coulson no matter what for Blast Mail Day, but instead of someone like Star-Lord or someone like Ancient One who gives the 45% plus the dodge ignore as part of the tier 2 passive, you can absolutely go with his father, Scott Summers. The reason for that being, well, he gives less energy attack. He gives 25% plus 15 from his 4-star passive if you have him at tier 2 and with his uniform. He also gives you a 5% bump to attack speed, and that's going to be really important to get more hits out of your 5th skill. That could result in you getting a much higher score just by making that one change. So definitely consider this team. It's probably the ideal team when all is said and done, but that would be one way of squeezing a little bit more out of Cable if you're finding that he's a bit too slow for his attack rotations, especially with that 5th skill. Obviously, you can't farm for Cable, so we can't talk about getting his bios. You do, of course, obtain 10 of them from World Boss once you've beaten the World Boss Cable Unlock quests that they now have, and then you can start ranking him up using feathers and Emcron crystals. He only requires half the number of bios, so it's the same as Quicksilver in terms of leveling him up. It's just going to cost you a lot of gold, and it's going to unfortunately cost 4,400 feathers, but it's definitely worth it. I think he's a fantastic character for PvE content. I don't know how much his worth is going to reflect in PvE or PvP content, but he's definitely now the most valuable character for Extreme Alliance battle. Being able to cover 2 days with monster scores is just irreplaceable. So let me know what you guys think of the review on Cable. Let me know what you think of the character and how he ranks up for you and what you've been able to do with him in Extreme Alliance battle, if you guys are scoring well with him, or if you have a different rotation than me, or if you have any other questions at all. Hit me up in the comments below. If you enjoyed it, hope you're subscribed, and if you're not, do it, I guess, if you want. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.